Hey, all out in the Traveling Molly's Cosmos. Welcome to our reading for this month, where we have Julia Levine and Elizabeth Robinson um, with us as features. These are two people that whose work I have read uh, and was just looking forward to the right time uh, to have them here, and now you've got them for the evening, as well as our wonderful open micers. Aldi Genova, my co-host, is not here tonight, and so Bill and I are going to be holding down the fort. Usually we start by reading a poem of our own, and then get started um, with our wonderful open mic. Um, so the features tonight have both done work in the field of psychology and social service, and as a result, I was thinking um, I should read something along those lines. And there's one that was inspired, or at least partially inspired, by a client of mine who, in wrapping up therapy, um, talked about things he wanted to remember for his dark days, because they always come. And he said he was going to always remember the woman when he was playing soccer or field hockey who said to him that he should never wear a shirt. And being an engineer, people didn't usually tell him that he should never wear a shirt. This is called invitation. The girl in the bleachers tells the bashful athlete he should never wear a shirt. This makes his washboard muscles smile. He enters the memory into a matrix of gratefuls. A stuttering child remarks, "You look hungry, Mr. Pigeon," and scatters a handful of popcorn. 10 minutes later, a man in a coma wakes up and tells his nurse a joke. Every time a car pulls over to offer a lift, it's a Prince Charming moment, a gift of "I love you." Stick out your thumb, there's a plum on its way, just when it seems as if summer forgot. You can see the morning lorries straining at their stakes, heads full of thirst, water hydrants untapped, waiting to be needed. Look, incipient windows open to anything, curtains fluttering as only curtains can. From opposite sides of the street, two dogs yap and yap. Herds of traffic surge between. The animals tug at their leashes, tails wagging. How could the owners help but notice? This is resisting my attempts at opening it. Imagine snatches of piano in a major key, at least more major than minor. It's not so far a stretch. Hand out, smudged envelope, sunlight inside. All right, then. Thank you. And well, let's get started. Um, let's see. We definitely have a plethora of men tonight, so that's where I'm going to start. Uh, Kurt Heinz, good to see you tonight. Let's
Thank
see
you.
what you got.
Thank you. Good to see old friends and some hope to make some new friends here. Pablo, good going, man. I will. I was going to do two, but I think I'll keep it brief because we want to get into our features. I think this sounds really interesting. What's going on tonight? There is. I've been given jobs over time. You know, people tell me you have to do this, you have to do that. We all have these things that we do, Mr. Harrison, that we do in the name of poetry or literature, things that we feel sometimes that are our duties. This piece comes from such a duty. It's titled "That One Afternoon with Studs and Me." And Nina, I think you were part of this. There was a memorial that we had to go to out in Oak Park, and Studs Terkel came, and I was assigned as a driver. Oh boy. So kind of a moment there. I'd seen him a few times. Anyway, I have to switch back and forth. This is one of those things I regret that might be better seen this way than heard aloud because there are visual cues as to who's saying what, and I'll try to make my voice inflect it a little bit. So bear with me, friends, okay? That one afternoon with Studs and me, I told him it was time to get home. Okay, I can take the L. But I told him I still have the car. It was Oak Park. I could drive home. Okay, the green line is fine. I coaxed him to the car. Here's a blue line station. You can let me off. But in the middle of the Eisenhower freeway, we couldn't stop. Besides, I had the duty to drive him home, which I did. He was too old to go otherwise. In the traffic, his hearing aid buzzed like a phone siren left off the hook. Speech made it worse. But we didn't stop talking. Him, radio, me, digital recordings, all about stories, why we chased them. He invited me to come inside. Thanks for driving me. You didn't need to, but I had. His selflessness was true, and yet hearing it still felt awkward. Back in a minute, he said. I browsed the home a bit. The dining table, heaped high with notes, mail, God knows what. Like I saw in Sandberg's preserved desk in North Carolina, but 3 times as wide. Here, and he handed me a signed copy of a new book, with his thanks, too, written inside. Good times rolling on. Humbled, I didn't know what to say besides my own thanks. When my speech broke, he spoke. Gentle man, gentle voice. We talked. We got lost some more on stories people told us. Pricelessness, oddities, epiphanies. I was still humbled, but proud of the stories I'd kept. I still am. Then his son came in. Hi, so Dad, who's this? He explained. We shook hands, chatted about that afternoon. Then farewells, out the door. The last I saw him alive, our father, who, and this is the book. And it says to Kurt, what a delight meeting you. Let the good times roll, studs. I don't know if that's visible in video, but it's a prize. And yeah, Nina, you're fond of criticizing me. You're literal. Well, yeah, sometimes life gives you things. So here we are. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Were you going to do that other poem? Let's hear it.
Oh God. Well, it's another. It's short. Thank goodness for that. It's very rough, and if you don't like it, you guys can go "Ugh," in your Zoom windows. It's all right.
We don't do
Um,
that here, but
well,
yes.
it's open mic time. Give it a whirl. And I was trying to be brief, but here we go. And it is another author reference, but you'll get it right away. Needless Robin song. So a robin came down my walk. Why the hell should I care? He should shut up. Instead, he was singing an hour before sunrise, prideful for having a nest with eggs in it. But his hen laid them, not him. So I turn away from the window, roll to face my husband, try not to pull his blankets away, then watch him sleep. I like that. It reminds me. Morning lust fades with age, but no matter, because you're bonded for life. Even better. There we go. Thank you, friends. Great to see so many good people here. Thank you.
And great to have you here. How about John Simmons from Hawaii?
Hi, thanks, Nina. John Simons here from Honolulu, and so we have a number of professional shrinks in the house, and which reminds me that a previous Surgeon General said that we were all suffering from a national epidemic of loneliness, and I think that probably continues. This poem, which is quite short, but it has to do with the feeling one gets when you see a picture, an inviting picture of a large city at night with lights in various shapes, and how a person feels as one approaches the prospect of a city at night. It's promises and it's kind of disappointment. So this is called Lights Seeking Life. The power of vertical loneliness invites the visitor to wander and reflect on what enticements match the stiletto glows that beckon from street side entry to penthouse exclusion. How the city teases strangers with its starry kilowatts of welcome, its neon mirage of fellowship, displayed among those smitten by its streaking dazzle. Beams of allure refract, suggesting others will join in freeing, joy-driven tones with midnight music's tuneful talk among alien friendly voices, some lurking or locked in cloud storage behind blurry heights of slender life, hoping to feel that big bandwidth beat. Beyond the darkened trees, the lights above convey selective planetary hopes that life exists, awaiting those who share its signals. Thank you.
Right. I like the neon and the how many watts, however many watts. Um, how about Judy Valenti? Nice to see you. Always nice to see you.
Thanks. Thanks, Nina, and good evening, everybody. Nice to see you, Kurt. We just read about a month ago up in Chicago together, so nice to see you. Perhaps like me, you were just mesmerized by that Artemis 2 mission around the moon. So I wanted to read in honor of the astronauts three relatively short moon poems that I have. The first one, they saw a lunar eclipse when they were up there. And this is a poem about a lunar eclipse. Amber occluded eye, more iris now than pupil, whose dark lashed lid droops slowly lower, succumbs to night's hypnosis. Earth falls from memory, a bead lost in cobalt light. The Buddha, it is said, had 1,000 eyes to watch the world with compassion. Tonight, 1,000,000 pairs of eyes fix on the one dreaming I, suspended beyond earth's sorrowful drumbeat, the humming of the sun. Saturn to the west, Regulus to the east, a universe at peace. Sun, moon, planet aligned, like patches of a quilt, as if peace were a cloth we could cuff in our hands, rub between our fingers, and the only language that matters, silence. Nina, I think you published that poem in one of your magazines or anthologies.
Was it Fifth Wednesday or?
Yeah, something like that. It was, yeah. That was from my collection, Discovering Moons. And here's another moon poem from my new collection, How to Be a Contemplative. It's called Super Wolf Moon, and it begins with an epigraph by Li Po. I too must be happy with all around me. It rises, a white, bloodless eye, egg cupped in the womb of night, mover of moods and tides, fraternal twin of the cold, unheeding earth. What loneliness presses the moon onward, faithful each night as a monk at Compline? Is it the hard determination of one who's lived too long without sound, yearning for touch, one small step, one more shadow dance upon the chest? Lone cloud, like an exhaled breath, passes before its open wolf mouth. I think of poor Li Po seeing the moon's reflection in a wine cup, mistaking its face for his drinking companion. Still he sings, alone in the silence, dances with his silhouette, a friend of moon and shadow in the time of happiness. And thank you. And one more. This one was written shortly after I married my husband. I got married later in life, so it was not that long ago. And it was around the time when they were discovering all these moons around Jupiter, that Jupiter had lots more moons than anybody ever thought. So it's a little bit of our domestic life blending kind of with the science of the time. It's called Discovering Moons, the title poem of the collection. What happens, happens in silence. We wake in a room your daughter painted sunrise red. Daylight drips through linen curtains, feeds us intravenously. Like Galileo with his scope, unearthing Jupiter's moons, we lie on our backs on the white clay of our bed, chart the constellations of ceiling. That Y-pronged crack you call a ballerina en pointe in fifth, her arms flung above her, about to slide into an arabesque, I say, is Christ strung upon his cross, moments after earth shuddered, temple curtain tore apart. On a shelf in the living room, a brown box contains all that remains of your mother, every pigment of bone, muscle, cilia, cartilage. One day you will spread such fine matter across the mining hills of Edwardsville, the coast of Ventura, the prairie outside of Normal. In soundless desert, astronomers discover new moons, 45 in the last 6 months around Jupiter alone. There is so much I want to say to you in a language without words. We orbit each other like the moons circling Jupiter. in unconjugated space. Europa, Callisto, Leda, Ganymede, Thebe. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
I had to write that down and then I forgot the second word. Unconjugated space, was it?
Unconjugated space.
Space.
In other words, no words, silence, complete silence. Yeah.
No conjugate.
Right.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you. And Bob Chico, let's hear what you got tonight.
Let's find out. Kurt, I'm reminded that our old friend Tony Fitzpatrick, who was a very good friend of Studs Terkel, did an absolutely killer Studs impression. I hope you got to hear it once, because we won't hear it again. I just have a few short ones for the season. This time of year, when even the bee's knees can fall in love with the rat's ass, old animal and me pursue no other in their remove, but sniff out a second animal in me. After everything has already blossomed and bloomed, here you go, old love, bursting into laughter. The rain is done with ending up in the river again. It would rather pool in a rutted road, in the depressions of the sinking city, in the low lyings of your body laying here in the open to catch the last and first drops in your mouth. Kneeling in soft mud, it is easier to remember whom you are praying to. Cimetière. The last snow to melt laves the gravestones as if they were the feet of a leper. May the silence in death be as this evening early in spring, windless with hidden animals holding still, no leaves yet for rustling, the far-off train long departed, and the crickets 1 or 2 nights away from beginning to sound. This night, Juliet does not want any company, just to sit on the edge of her balcony, swinging her legs back and forth in the air. In less than a month, the warmth of the day will no longer turn cold resolutely after sunset, so we've still a little time left to keep each other warm at night. After spring rains, Narcissus must pay visits to so many ponds. Off after 11 days of work, I meant to lay out beneath this tree just beginning to bloom and watch the light change hour by hour until civil twilight and hunger set in, but was so taken by one cast in early afternoon that I held to it and did not follow the remainder of the changes, as if that hour were my youth. April looks at May, December and says, "Come now, oh, she's too old for you." Chaucer's prologue. With one finger I draw a face in the round smudge of oil left by your hair, where you had rested your head against the window of the train, one eye looking out at the stories going by. And I'll end with the prologue. Wander April with his shorter sota, the drift of March hath pierced to the rota, and bathed every vein in switch liqueur of which vertu engendred is the floor. One zurf zephyrus, eke with a sweeter breath, in spirit hath in every halt and hath the tendre croppies, and the Yuna sona hath in the ram his half coors Verona. And smaller fowls machen melodie that slepen all the night with open ear. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bob. I love our open mics because there's just so much variety in style and content. Um, and so saying, I'm going to have Kaveh Basiri come up, read next, doing translations.
Hi everyone. I'm happy to be part of this reading. It's been a while. As you all know, probably much has been going on in Iran. I translate from Persian, and that's what I've been focusing on the last couple of years. There's especially, but also true before when I was getting my PhD and things like that. So I wanted to read two poems, one a little short, one a little bit longer. They're both from two Iranian women. And my general frame is to cover with these poems a lot of territories. The first one, however, is written about the Iraq War and the experience of the war, and is part of a series of war tableaus that a poet the love of Freshte Sari wrote. It's this number two of the war tableaus. Of the house, only the gabled roof remained over the column of memory, like an umbrella opened for no reason. Of the dragonfly, its antenna in search of a sound. The whirlwind of dust and smoke was a giant freed from a narrow-necked jar. A piece of wood in the rough water could have been a child's skiff, and the flying papers his slender planes. On this canvas, the space for a signature was blank. The second one is by Rosa Jamali, and she's a quite an interesting, fascinating experimental writer. Constantly mixing ecofeminists whose as characters become embody everything. This is just one example. She wolf, vulture, tiger. Do you see the snakes and chains on my shoulders? And have you seen the eagles' nests in my two dark blind eyes? Have you seen the pigeons that have nested like a crow on my head? And the crows that have perched on the diamonds and emeralds of my body? Have you seen this marble throne that appears to have melted in the crimson gold and the precious stone which has infiltrated up to 21 meter in my eyes? That in fact your eyes, your pupils. Have you seen me breastfeed the skinny lamb of Shahr Sukhde on this stone in a four-gated city of a borrowed land and make love with the naked vultures? Have you? And with all my vital passion, sleep with the wolves. Have you seen it? And did you see me kiss their sharp claws with a clumsy bow and become a true she-wolf vulture tiger? My dummy body, stuffed with straw, broadcloth, paper, and foil. Have you seen the burnt wing catchers, the tea plantations, the saffron flowers in the shrubs of my breasts? How about the snakes that have licked down my limbs? I was the compass of this sea in the age of bronze, and I am the red rose hanging from a column in Alhambra, a plant that has become the very scorpion which is wrapped around and made a nest in my stuffed body. Have you seen it? The one that has set up home in a tree and in my little cube, and you had grabbed at the stem of my sky, which you had wrapped inside me, and they covered my days, which are simple and dark. It's the very fox that ran aground here, waiting for the tiger that is me. I am those very rocks and boulders connected to the corals of the seabed and corroding in the sands and marshes of your body. That very rope of mine you seem to have sewn to the sky. Have you seen the chicory extract that is mixed with the cedar perfume? Or these wild grasses and seaweeds? The vulture, had you seen them in my crimson gold? They were nibbling on my eyes, while I was sitting on a marble stone, declaring the time like a woodpecker tapping. I wish I could return at the hour of the owl in middle of the night. What has this earth done to me? And this wild algae? That this tiger? Thank you.
That was so gorgeous. Would you say the name of that second poet again?
Rosa Jamali. That series came out in APR a few months ago, well,
Did
last
you
year.
say APR?
Yeah.
American
Um,
Poetry Review, for those of you who want to look it up. And oh, Elizabeth is asking if you can write out their names. So if you can, just put it in the chat, that'd be great. I have one more question for you, which is, does translating feel more like channeling or alchemy, if either?
well, channeling would not always happen. I wish it would be more like that. Alchemy would be probably closer to the normal experience of it. But you do get very close. If you're doing somebody for a long time, you do end up hearing, seeing things, and you do get that close, I think. I think.
Thanks. Wow. Um, I'm taking these liberties because we have a little extra time tonight, which is great. So, Mimi Rosenbush, it's great to have you here tonight.
It's nice to be back. Before I start, Kurt, I have to make another Studs reference. As a young girl, I rode the 151. Can you hear me okay? He used to get on at Sheridan and Diversey with his red socks and red tie.
Oh,
So,
he loved his Red Sox.
yeah.
That was famous, and I never saw them much, except there was one thing that speaking of Tony Fitzpatrick, Mr. Shaquan, there was an event that he attended there, and he was a guest of honor, and I think it was a benefit, so he put his Red Sox up for auction, and they scored.
That's great. I'm going to read two poems, two rather short poems. The first one is called A Poem Almost Born. The world all fizzy with delight, a new poem, gleefully born, its words soar and pop. Just try to catch them. Fonted words flying among power lines, centered, justified, spaced. I cannot touch this poem's knowledge electric, dancing you out of your mind. Just sense its possibility. That's all you can do. Until maybe next time, when words pregnant and round, penciled with poetic hope, won't disappear from white lined notebook paper. Erased by raindrops, they drip through a three-holed punch. Maybe next time a new poem will work. Its words penned in metaphor, indelibly absorbed into a sheet of paper. Click, save as, give it a name. My next poem is part of a series I'm working on about Paris. Paris becomes morning in the Marais. A young man rides his bicycle to the Rue de Rivoli, his backpack barely seen against the blackness of his jacket. Collar up against the pre-dawn chill. He pedals past a red-capped fishmonger, whole fish laid out on ice chips, unnatural under stark white light. The street's medieval buildings are cream-colored, lit by yellow street lamps in early morning quiet. With her ancient broom, an old woman, warmed by a fringed shawl, sweeps yesterday's dust from a shop step, unaware of me watching through my camera from the hotel across the street. I tremble as the night's gossamer curtain vanishes in a sliver of sky, revealing bicycle baskets gathering a sudden November snow. I smell morning coffee behind me while dishes clash and morning begins.
Great. It's always good to have you, Mimi. And now, how about if we go to Scott Delgarno? Scott, it's nice to see you.
Thanks so much, Nina. I'm glad to be back. I'm going to do a translation as well. In fact, just one poem of Du Fu, also known as Tu Fu, 8th century Tang dynasty poet who was a drinking buddy of Li Po's. So there's an echo there in the room, which is a good one. This was, in fact, this was actually poem of the week in the Yale Review 2 weeks ago. So that's why it's on my mind. A little background, Du Fu was around 50 when he wrote this, had a young family, married after 40 because he didn't make up enough of a living until he was 40 to afford a wife, but had some small children and was living in a time of civil war in China when everything was in total chaos. It was 10 years of carnage. And he would put his family in one place that he thought was safe for them and then make as close to a living as he could as a civil servant in a different place, knowing that in a time of revolution, he could be killed at any time or have no work. Anyway, so at one point, he just couldn't stand it anymore, went home. And so this poem is called Return to Chang Village, a long trip home that he didn't actually think he'd even survive. So that's the background to this. It's in 3 parts. Return to Chang Village. Scruffy clouds redden the west, sunlight horizontal. At the familiar gate, sparrows greet the stranger who's covered 1,000 miles. My wife and kids dissolve in shock, a flood of tears. Recovering, we ponder the luck of my survival in such a time. The neighbors raise the roof, climb the fence in sobbing celebration. Aura of candles deep into the dawn make it seem a hazy dream. 2. This late life chapter I live in forced exile. The joy of coming home is mixed. My darling son strangles my knees, fearing I'll bolt again. I remember the days we pursued the cool, hopping from shade to shade around the mountain pool. The north wind whispers that winter is coming, bringing with it 100 worries to weigh me down. Fortunately, the wheat and millet are cut. Fresh water is already filling the press with the promise of wine, enough, I hope, to cushion my coming decline. And 3, the last section. The chickens are in a lather. I chase the roosters into the trees. It's then I hear what disturbs them, a knock at our wooden gate. 4, maybe 5 old men want to hear of my time away. Each one offers wine, emptying their jugs, weak and cloudy, apologizing for the quality. All the young men have been conscripted. The war rages, and none are left to tend the millet fields. I offer this poem as my gift to their fathers, a tendering of my affection for them. Done singing, I look about me, tears thin every cup. Thanks a lot.
Boy, I'm going to be brimming over before the features even begin. It's great stuff. Pablo, are you ready?
Yep.
Pablo Arevalo.
Thank you so much. I have two for you. The first is, if you stood any closer, you'd be underground. Help me dress these wounds with words. There's just nowhere to run. What do you mean 10,000 people died? I'm sorry that you got caught in the middle of an open funeral all year long. A mother searches for the children a bomb shattered through a wall. It was a sunny day and a war, and we forgave ourselves for looking away. But we want to have a nice day in the middle of, what do you mean 10,000 people died? Help me dress these wounds with words. There's just nowhere to run. And this poem. When they deport me. When they deport me, may my nephew not see it. May the sky not break with the lightning of his cries. May my mother not fall to the floor like an empty suitcase. When they deport me, I don't want the indignity of their orders, their threats, their official dehumanization, my neck in their trap, my snout shut. I don't want the labyrinth of absurdities, the legal theater reliving the pages of Kafka, the trial without trial. When they deport me, I don't want to love a place that throws me away. I don't want to see an elm with the leaves between green and gold, or the lake at night when the lights of the city mix with a net of stars. Thank you.
Yeah, give all of yourselves a round of applause. My mind is blown here. Um, and without further ado, we're going to go to the features, but actually, no, we have a little bit more ado to do, which is to really encourage people to donate so that we can pay our features, a little thing that we used to be able to do by just passing a hat, now requires people to go to, well, actually, uh, there's going to be a link in the chat, both on YouTube and in Zoom, and you'll find yourself on the After Hours website that Al runs, and it's gonna have a donate button, and there you go. You can do that, and I hope you will. But even more than that, I hope you're gonna buy the books of our features, because that's the best gift you can give a poet, is to read their poems. So that's the announcement. And now our features are talking about what a great open mic this has been. Obviously, I agree. So let's see if I can get to where the bios are. All right, here we go. We're going to start with Elizabeth Robinson. She is the author most recently of Vulnerability Index from Northwestern University Press, and slash Curbstone Books, which is a finalist for the Forward Indie Prizes. Her book, Being Modernists Together, is forthcoming in 2026 from Solid Objects. You're going to want to keep your eyes peeled. Robinson was anthologized in the 2023 Pushcart Prize Annual and the 2025 Best American Poetry. She has been a winner of the National Poetry Series and a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Award in Poetry. She lives in, is it Pinole, California? I do want to remind people in the audience that I think these two features are going to raise all kinds of interesting things that we'll be talking about in our conversation after they're finished. So stay with us. Elizabeth, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to everybody who read. I'm looking forward to hearing Julia as well. So I'm going to read from Vulnerability Index, and it is maybe a little bit more like documentary poetry. We said earlier in the conversation with some of the folks here that I worked for a time with chronically unhoused people in Boulder. And so some of this comes pretty much directly from conversations. Hobos, bums, unhoused, homeless. My friend is leaving the downtown bus station late at night and sees a woman lingering there. He hesitates and then asks, "Do you have any place to go?" She looks out the door toward the street. "I'm not homeless," she tells him. "I'm indigent." Necessary lies. I'm almost there. Yeah, I sleep on a roof on Pearl Street, which you can do if you're quiet about it. Some of these guys, they set up tents, I mean, dumb as a box of rocks. To keep the space to myself, I told them that the police come around a lot and that I get ticketed for trespass. Then some teenage kids climbed up one night and I started screaming at them, "You little fuckers, I'm the owner of this building. I knew I'd catch you coming up here to drink and smoke pot." They scattered like cockroaches. I'll be right back. They call it white money. You get $100 into prison and you can turn it into 400, no problem. You got to have money there so you can buy weed, cigarettes, stuff like that. How'd I get a $100 bill? Easy. My mom. She'd bring the baby in with money in the Pampers. Oh yeah, you fold it like so, tiny. You pretend your foot itches, take off your sock while you're talking. They do a strip search when you go back in, of course. You gotta bend and cough and lift 'em. So you put the money in the fold between your toes and your feet. When they search you, just lift your feet but curl your toes. I glued it in with honey. Yeah, about 20 minutes before my mother came, I'd paint some honey on the bottom of my toes and let it air dry, get really sticky. Hey, there were other ways too. I had my braids down to here. I put some Vaseline behind my ear. Then while you're talking during the visiting hours, you rub Vaseline on the money so it gets kind of tacky. Scratch your head, put the money in the crease behind your ear, smooth out your braid. Oh no, they can't search my hair. That's my religion. I have rights. I'm coming home soon. So there's these guys who go over to the high school and they tell kids we're shamans. Right. You give us a little money, we'll initiate you. Uh-huh. Like that's spiritual. Put a little acid in some green tea, get them high. I can pay you back next week. I woke up and some guy was pulling my backpack right out from under my head. When he realized that I was awake, he started punching my face. See this mark here? He hit hard. So I got up fast and began fighting back. What is this? I was so filled with rage. I kicked his face twice. Then I used my foot to break his arm. I thought, is this what I've become? Left him moaning under a tree. I picked up my stuff, walked over to Circle K, asked the clerk if I could call 911. When the operator picked up, I told her I found a man hurt, lying in the park near Canyon. I don't know what happened, but I think he's got a broken arm. You better send an ambulance. I just wanted to borrow it. After I got out of jail, my mother kicked me and my kids out of her house. So I told them that my husband was beating us and held us like we were in prison, that he locked us, me and the 3 kids, in a tiny little room and made us pee in a bottle. He threw a dish of food in and we just had to eat it off the plate like we were dogs. Yeah, I said that to get us into the shelter. I'm on my way. The jail deputy. The jail deputy who has accidentally left me locked into the C unit hallway 3 times listens when I say who I need to see and why. One case manager calls her One Punch Gina because, though she is not very big, she regularly topples large, angry men with a single blow. The deputy gets her, leaves her without cuffs, says, "We can take as long as we want." He locks us into the hallway. I tell her that her friend has died, her longtime brother of the streets, almost expecting that she will show no emotion. But she cries and cries, locked in and locked out late on a Friday afternoon. After the psychotic man upended the podium and ran toward the judge, after the woman sobbed about having her children taken from her custody, the man in withdrawal vomited in the defendant box, and the man who was still high crouched to take a shit in the midst of pleading guilty. And after another man stepped forward to ask the judge to release his brother to his care and then paused in bereft silence. And after the deputy yelled at me for going into the defendant box, or the public defender called the defendant by the wrong name again, I would often leave jail court and take my lunch break at the nearby animal shelter, wandering among the eager puppies, and there I might run into the parole officer from jail court, who arrived just about the same time that I did. Overheard. Code. If a client says that they can't see the words on the forms, that usually means that they don't know how to read. So sit down and fill out the forms with them. If a client says that they can't look up apartment listings on the computer because they don't know how to work a computer, that usually means that they are a sex offender and have to stay away from computers. So just print up the housing listings for them. This one's a little bit longer. It's called The Charity Tourists. The Charity Tourists. We'll be arriving at about 10:15 with a donation of coats, and they do arrive. 1 coat, 4 people, and a video camera. Generous people documenting themselves in film, standing beside exhausted-looking people who have dirty hands. Everybody has to smile. They bring discarded Easter baskets filled with tiny hotel hand soaps and their own cast-off, high-end, partially used cosmetics, all of it wrapped in cellophane and ribbon. Pose for the picture. Her husband is one of our biggest donors. Celebrate International Hand Washing Day. I steal a half-empty tube of wrinkle cream. Remember that a client told me one day a volunteer had asked her, "How do you maintain that beautiful tan?" And later I listen to the phone message in which a woman angrily complains that the shelter is too hard to find, that she's sick of driving around looking for it, so she's going to give her donation to someone else, but she still wants her call returned. I do call back and leave a message saying that we are sorry that we are so hard to find. Well, in the same batch of phone messages, a woman who leaves no name instructs us to call her son, whose phone number she does leave, because he has been feeling low and she needs us to buck him up by telling him he will do some volunteering on Christmas Day. Call him. Or perhaps call the man who decides on December 24th that he wants to volunteer to help at the Christmas dinner, but he's going to need to know right away what the details are, or he will make other plans. Call him ASAP. The charity tourists visit during Christmas, as generosity is a seasonal affliction. They recover when the weather gets warmer. In the meantime, they tromp through the cold and snow, past the dirty men who are lined up for lunch, to leave an array of ladies' summer sandals and frilly size small tops. Why are these chiffon tops always extra small? I score a slightly frayed silk scarf from one brown paper bag, and a woman comes in after hours with her 2 wide-eyed children to leave us packages of extra large. Why do they always bring extra large underpants? She wants her children to be grateful to see how other people live, even though I'm the only person here. I invite them to walk upstairs to see another empty room, and they tiptoe up nervously. Not like the nervousness of the woman with a walker who gives us 2 heavy coats, stumbling to bring them in and confiding as she leaves, "Do you know Joe, the one with the spiky hair? He's my son. Please don't tell him I was here." The bags arrive when we need gloves, but there are rarely gloves. Joe takes blue mittens not left by his mother, and at the end of the day I find one bag I've forgotten to unpack beside my desk. 3 identical sweaters, each in a different color. I show them to the woman who really wants a belt. "But they're adorable. If you don't want the blue one, I'll take it." And she snaps it up quickly as I lean forward with my hand outstretched to take it for myself. Intake. What causes contributed to your being homeless? Wife died. Bad grief. What causes contributed to your being homeless? I have the gift of tongues. What causes contributed to your being homeless? I chose for the wilderness long ago. She is the meanest woman I have ever met. When another woman comes out of general arraignment crying, she follows her down the corridor, hissing, "Pussy." When she is called before the judge, she pauses to point me out, saying that I am fat and dressed like a peasant. Another defendant reaches across the aisle to pat my arm in sympathy. But when she has been in jail for a few weeks, the meth is out of her system. She is taking her meds. Her eyes, instead of icy, are blue. She tells the judge that she can't make up her mind how to plead. She's quiet, genuinely confused. Two huge deputies, expecting a fight, lift her from her seat to take her back to her cell. She turns to me in fear, and not knowing what to say, I blurt out, "You'll be okay. Call upon your faith." The judge raises her eyebrows at me. The parole officer looks incredulous. Remember that she hates your guts. The book is called Vulnerability Index, and one of the questions in this questionnaire that assesses people, the vulnerability index that assesses people for their vulnerabilities and therefore their eligibility for housing, is, do you have daily activities that bring pleasure and meaning to your life? If you answer in the affirmative, you are penalized. Do you have daily activities that bring pleasure and meaning to your life? Here's a picture of my son. He lives with his grandma. Isn't he good looking? The Lord has blessed me. I go to the library and check out sheet music and learn to play it on my guitar. Frisbee with my friends. Sometimes I go to the Carnegie Library and read up on local history. I knit this little blanket for you. I write poems, I compose songs, I draw, I paint, I can whirl a mean hula hoop. I had this job for a while, mopping the bakery floor at night when everyone else was gone, and that was so peaceful. It helped keep me off dope. My sister is my best friend, my ex-wife, my husband, my dog. I like to be useful. I tried to pause every day with a hot cup of coffee, and that can be a challenge if you're homeless. I envision myself flipping a burger in a skillet, and that soothes me. Thank you.
Wow. Give it up for Elizabeth Robinson. Boy, will I have some questions for you upcoming. Definitely will. There was something else I was going to mention. Don't forget to look at the links for a feature's books, and also to make a donation for our features. I will most likely remember what I was going to say, but since I don't know it now, I'm going to introduce you to Julia Levine. Julia has published 6 collections of poetry, including Lullaby for the Sixth Extinction, winner of the Wolfson Press Poetry Chapbook Prize, Ordinary Psalms, LSU Press, winner of a Nautilus Award, and Small Disasters Seen in Sunlight, also on LSU. That's Louisiana State or University, am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Also winner of the 2015 Northern California Book Award. Recently, she's been awarded a Pushcart Prize as well as an American Academy of Poetry Poet Laureate Fellowship for her work in building resiliency in teenagers related to climate change through poetry, science, and technology. That is also cool. Her poems have been published in many journals, including the Missouri Review, The Nation, Plowshares, the Southern Review. Her seventh full-length collection, Landscape in Disappearing Ink, will be published by LSU in 2027. So you're going to want to keep your eyes out for both of these poets' upcoming releases. So, Julia.
Thank you, Nina. And it was such a pleasure to listen to everyone, including Elizabeth's really powerful work. Are you able to hear me? Because I have my air conditioner on because it's so hot today. Okay. I'm going to explain a little bit about the larger subject of the book that I don't know let me see if this is visible. But well, actually I don't know where it is now. So I'm going to read initially from the Lullaby for the Sixth Extinction, and I want to explain a little bit about the book. It's on the surface the story of my 5-month-old grandson and his parents going through a very brutal treatment for infant leukemia. There are also several poems throughout the book about climate crisis, and you may wonder, like, why did I pick these two things? Well, the larger framework for me is the idea of a liminal space, a threshold between existence and whatever surrounds it. And it's hard to stay in that place, but there are experiences that force you into this place, a crisis like the one we are in. And month after month, we lived with this horror and suffering and terror that this baby would die. I wouldn't get to know him. I would never see him walk or talk or develop a personality he had a personality, of course, initially, but at 5 months, a baby's a project that's still under construction. And my daughter told me that I had to tell her, my job was to tell her over and over that he would make it, that she could survive it if she knew he'd live. But she told me, if he's going to die, I'm not going to make it. So tell me he's okay, Mama. And those were my marching orders, which meant that I could not cry or express fear. I could not show anything other than hope. And poetry was how I lived through this experience. Otherwise, I think I would have imploded. And I also, though, came to understand that it was okay to have to live with hope, even if it means taking on an amount of denial. And that was helpful to me also in my feelings about this planet. It's almost unbearable to think we're not going to make it. And yet, it's okay to have some hope. You don't have to live in complete despair. So I'm going to begin by reading some poems from this book. The first one is called Children's Oncology Floor. It's so quiet that a baby crying down the hall resembles music. And so too the uncommon beauty of this pigeon perched on a steel girder 8 floors up, her marbled brown and white wings folded down before she rises over rooftops out to San Francisco Bay. And I want that bird to fly deep into yesterday, where my grandson is simply a baby with a mouthful of plastic keys and a mobile of bright stars and moons singing its way around his head. And I want the pigeon to drop a note down to the prayer ladies posted outside the hospital chapel, the paper printed with his full name, Roger Stephen Hansen, so the faithful can beseech on his behalf, believing, however it is they do, that God's will be done with a Broviac catheter and feeding tube and caustic chemo excreted into diapers changed every hour as his new body burns from the inside out. And because I can only watch so much, I sit a while outside his room, listening to Chopin float down the hall from the nurse's station, wondering what it is like music that bridges one moment to the next. Then this child in a bright pink dress and hat turns the corner. She and her mother wheel an IV pole between them. Great job, honey, her mom says, as the girl's skeletal legs step haltingly across the floor. Surrender will be the last thing I have left. But for now, let this child walk out of her grave, showing us how slowly, deliberately it must be done. So unfortunately, there was an enormous number of, well, not enormous, but too many children and babies on the pediatric oncology ward that didn't make it. And while we were there was a teenager with bone cancer that lost her legs before she lost her life. There was a child whose cancers recurred long after everyone thought the child had been cured. And there was a baby who was just a year older than our grandson. And he went through every treatment for his brain cancer until there was nothing left. And really, there was no way not to feel devastated by this and angry too. So if this poem offends anyone who's religious, I'm sorry, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm also a Jew, so what do I know about Jesus? But I felt watching this baby die that there was something of a crucifixion in this whole thing. And so I'm using the last 7 things Jesus said on the cross in this poem. And I have to admit, at that point, I didn't know how to love a God that let children suffer and die. I still don't really. But that's me. While baby Percy begins dying. You know, before I say anything else, I just want you guys to know this has a happy ending. He's 3.5 and he's amazing. And he's a poster child for science. So I don't want you to get too bogged down in the pain of this because there will be light at the end. Usually when I do this reading, I have pictures of him. So you know that he's okay. But this poem is for baby Percy. While baby Percy begins dying in the room next door, I remember the last 7 things Jesus said as nurses and doctors gown up, enter, leave. When I hear sobbing, I revise the first. Forgive them. They know not what they do, to include God, given that Percy was just beginning to talk, learning that words could bring the world to him. And the second, today you will be with me in paradise. Percy on his way into wind or water, or that Korean dogwood in the park, pale blossoms floating like delicate saucers brimmed with cream. Then the third, behold the mother, behold the son, which must be the one body they share, suffering chemo, radiation, surgeries. 12 times Percy's neuroblastoma recurs. So the fourth, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why? And the fifth too, I thirst, meaning not simply the parch of dying, but the fierce yearning for a moment more of Percy, his brown curls, his lilting voice, that one afternoon he shrieked with joy in a wheelchair his father raced down the hall. Now a loud commotion, footsteps, the sixth, it is finished. Though not quite, as the family travels past our room, carrying Percy home to die. To surrender to the last words spoken, Jesus said, Father, into your hands I place my spirit. Jesus, if you think there is anything holy about a baby beginning at the end while I lean against this steel crib, my hand on my grandson's chest, just to feel it empty and fill? Think again. So, I'm going to read a poem that took place when he was not done with the chemo. He was moved from the oncology unit to the bone marrow transplant unit. And there the harshest chemo begins. And we had to go back and forth because everything has to be sterilized. We had to bring food in, we had to wash, we had to scrub, we had to, quarantine. And strangely, even though my poor grandson was really suffering at this time because of the harsh chemo, it felt like the beginning of the cure. And so we found some hope, we found some joy. I was also reading the dream songs for the first time, and you'll hear the word jubilat as my word for joy in this poem. It's called Easier Said Than Done. Easier said than done to stay outside it here, where the sky balances over the bridge, joining this borrowed cottage to the cancer ward. Or driving across the bay to launder blankets stained with misery, his plush jubilat gone dark as radio silence. My mind like a goldfish swimming laps inside a too small bowl. My thoughts circling liver failure and mucositis and heart damage until I've lapsed into a loosening of grief, yellow as a finch flinging herself into the privet, and sings. Even now, in my nightgown, in the shadow of my grandson's suffering, I stand on the cold slate of the balcony, staring up at evening visible through 2 apple trees, as elation's sudden helium lifts me between soil and stars. Brief, but for the moment's span, I can believe one day love will find him nearly grown. In a garden like this, the gate unlatched. Helpless to stop, he's walking out under jasmine into the merciless perfume of this world. There's no straight line of recovery in situations like this. And Roger, my grandson, suffered so many near-death experiences. But one of the most terrifying was after the transplant, we got these lab results that said maybe the transplant hadn't taken, which is terrible news. It means if that's true, the cure will be worse, the prognosis will be worse, and the cancer that comes back will be more aggressive. And we had to wait a whole month before they could do another bone marrow biopsy, and it was a terrifying time. And the only way I could cope with my anxiety was to write a sonnet, because it felt like with form, I could say, okay, you just have to do 14 lines and they just has to be 10 syllables per line, and you can do that. And it really helped. So there's a beautiful place near me that's part of the Pacific Flyway. And I went there, as I often do, in the fall after it had rained. So this is called After Learning the Transplant May Have Failed. How hurried the light after rain. The snow geese wheeling across blue miles of wetlands. The ponds sun-steeped gold in late afternoon. If to pray is to ask and know there is no one and nothing to answer, then I will ask only to lie down in the wet grass, wingless under this flyway, this vast sky given to passage. I will ask, please embed him in the crossing over. Please give my grandson time in the only once of it. If to pray is to plead, I will beg the dust that worries these wild flocks as they rise and fall and cannot settle. Will beg for him to stay long among us. Please, it's late. Hurry now. And then months and months and months later, there came a time when it was clear the transplant had taken, his immunity markers started to rise, and for the first time in his 2 years of life, he could go outside and play and touch things. And this is about that experience. It's called My Grandson's First Week Back in the World. Take the sky, swallowed down by a warbler before it departs as song. Or darkness steeping those first 14 months on the cancer floor in a white crib, before the canopies of Chinese pistache leak red across the horizon, the lemon trees glowing in globes of juice. Today we return to the garden with its forbidden grass and soil, its bacteria and fungus that for too long would have killed him. But now, remade, maybe even cured, he can be buckled into the swings basket where he flies, breathless, out and back over the strange crossings he's been asked to make. Then we walk to the sandbox under winter's lean scythe of afternoon. Unstoppable his want. Look at how he starts, coating his hands, his lips with dirt, his body finely anointed with the lush possibilities of earth. So I'm going to close with two positive poems. Because I feel like these are poems from the new manuscript that's coming out from LSU Press next year. And I feel like with the kind of news we get these days, we really need good news. So this poem was written during the winter solstice. We spend time up in Washington State, and this poem was written when we were up there, and the daylight is so short up there because you're so far north. There's like, it gets dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it doesn't get light until 9 o'clock in the morning. So it seems like the minute the solstice is there, it's like, yes, yes. So this is called When Forever is No Longer on the Calendar, We Get Busy. Because winter's dark lets up beginning tomorrow, it's no longer all bad news. A new calf is born to the resident orcas. Our neighbors rewild their lawn with wild rye. Even in the remote mountains of Brazil, an ornithologist discovers the blue, slaty-masked tinamou, with its haunting song that climbs a scale slowly. The little bird is friendly with humans, which will be bad news for its future. Best to stay hidden, to wait quietly in the disappearing ink of night. Best to be a wild animal in perfectly camouflaged furs, like the buck last night when we were driving home, how it looked up from the terrifying vast on the verge of leaping, and for a moment I could see the slow detonation of our plot line, our blind reaching out for life, half scared to death, half awed at the beauty of what remains. That's the good and bad news for now. How some desires so ravenous it could devour everything. Some is simple, as this afternoon when I look into your eyes and ask, want to? And you stop whatever essential matter you're attending to, ordering new parts for the shower or trimming styrofoam to help your bees overwinter. Then for the millionth time you exclaim, really? Thrilled as a man given a brand new Lamborghini, and we undress, planning as we always do to take it slow. But of course, on the winter solstice, when it's already night by 4 in the afternoon, stars ripening just outside our bedroom, we gallop heedlessly as colts let out to pasture until my vocals arrive like a tinamou libretto, and boom, it's over. Our well-ridden animal bodies sweating in the sweet grass of joy. And this is my open mic poem. It's a brand new poem. It's called Eating the First Nectarine of the Year. It's very short. Because I know something about joy, I go slowly as I can, close my eyes, slip slices of orange flesh between my lips. Remember once in a faraway country watching a lake turn pink with flamingos. Maybe one joy pulls down another, like your body before, how you once lived in it, untroubled by disease. Or in the kitchen window, how sunlight fires up the grapevine, the leaves of vivid green that tremble in the slightest wind. Yes, I know joy ends too soon. Still, in this, my final slice of nectarine, a memory of you calling me to step outside last night under the porch light into rain. And there on the surface of the pond you dug one summer, a wild drumming of sparks. I know something about joy, how its juicy dazzle waits patiently under a terrible sky. Come down, the world says in every quiet corner of our rain-wet yard. Come down. Thank you.
It was lovely, Julia, just lovely. Give her a hand, people. Both of your work, I think, does the heart good. And so we're going to be able to talk about it. I see some hearts moving up on the Zoom screen. And yeah, so here we are, just the three of us, to talk about your work, which really does have a lot of points of connection. The first question I want to ask both of you is, what kinds of motivations went into writing these collections?
Well, I mean, the book about my grandson really did have to do with feeling like I wasn't allowed to experience the full range of what was happening to me because of what I needed to do for my daughter. And I'm my primary sense in the world is emotional. I'm not very good at just thinking or dissociating or moving away from something. I had to find a way to feel it. The best part of it all was that in the end, I think my entire family was so grateful that there was some way of making order and meaning and maybe even some beauty out of it. We did a reading in San Francisco where they live, and my grandson came and he listened so intently. And at one point, when I read the first poem where I talk about the prayer ladies reading his full name, he said, he just like lit up and in the middle of the poem said, "Bobby, that's me." And it felt like a full circle, sort of like now he can understand language. Now he can understand. He's like owning his own self, and it was just a really beautiful moment.
Wow. And so he's going to have this.
Mm.
He's going to have this. And he's going to be here.
Yeah, he's going to be here. I mean, who knows? He may be like a couple of my kids that just hate poetry. So who knows?
Well, then there's that.
Yeah, right.
Elizabeth, what about you? What were your motivations with this collection?
I think during the time that I was doing this work, it was like being thrown into a whole different culture, and the lives of people who live very near me. Uh, Once I started working with people who are living outside, I would go on a walk through the park and see someone I knew but didn't know before that they lived in the park. And so a lot of the writing was just me processing and kind of recording extraordinary things that people said and did. Because people could be incredibly generous and funny, also sometimes scary and heartbreaking. So I didn't think I was really writing. And then toward the end of the time that I was working at the court, I started looking at these pages and pages and pages of, so it was a lot for me to try to process what I was experiencing.
Mhm. Um, it's interesting because for both of you, this was a lot of processing, but it is also giving a gift um, of uh, your people's story being told, their voices being heard. You're smiling, Julia.
Well, just I love that you said that about, especially about Elizabeth's work. I know that population so well. I mean, I worked for Child Protective Services. I worked on death row. I worked in the juvenile um, detention centers sometimes. And I mean, I always felt like if people could only hear the resilience and the strength, oh, and on top of it, the horror. I mean, you know, I saw so much horror in my time because I was a worked for all of these community service agencies in the 80s when there was a huge meth epidemic out here, and the crimes against kids at that point were just horrific, just terrifying. And you kind of felt like you were on the front line. So I so understand exactly, I think, what Elizabeth is saying about like the culture. It, it it's stunning on every level. And then I love what you're saying, Nina, about giving the voice. I remember at first I felt like I wrote a lot of poems about my work, and I remember feeling like it felt a lot like being a witness, you know, like,
Absolutely.
I mean, so many people don't know what these kids go through, and the same for people who are really poor or addicted to drugs. I mean, the things they go through is awful.
Well, you guys, I kept telling you in emails how much I was looking forward to this reading tonight. And partially because, and I'd also seen Elizabeth's book beforehand, though not yours. Um, these were the kind of, this was what got me started writing poetry was in my work with clients, I was thinking, these voices just need to be heard. People need to know what's going on with people who are facing such hardship. And for all the pain, the beauty in it, and sometimes the humor. My husband will smile because he really loved this one. I had a client early on who I first met him on um, a locked ward at the state hospital, and he said to me, I really have to get my head together. This head. And like you have said, it's not all hardship. There is humor, there is warmth and connection and all of that. And, I also worked in prisons and in drug treatment programs. So I hear some of the voices that you are I don't know, translating or channeling or bearing witness to. Um, and it's so special to have the privilege of being able to do that. It's kind of like a second shot at bringing value, you
Yeah.
know. What are you thinking, Elizabeth?
Well, um, Northwestern was nervous, I think, about publishing this book because they were worried that it would look as though I was exploiting people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I have shared that concern. But when I would share poems with people who were featured in the poems, they didn't respond that way.
Right.
Um, so I think it's a really delicate thing, and I still carry some of that concern. Um,
I want to ask you about that. I made a little note about there was something, I can't remember the exact words, but was it like dirty people? That,
yeah, it was in the charity tourist poem because there are all these people lined up who are cold and grimy, and this woman had brought this giant Easter basket in the middle of winter with like half filled tubes of like high end cream, like face creams, and the little hotel soaps. And they made, because she was a donor, the director of the shelter made everybody line up and smile around the Easter basket. So it felt appropriate to say that
yeah,
the
yeah,
people living outside are dirty. They often don't have an option.
yeah. And that's where I was thinking, are you going to tell the story or are you not going to tell the story? Are you going to whitewash them in the name of political correctness? Or are you going to say the things that are maybe ugly or but true and tell the story to share these lives? And it's quite clear to me that doesn't come from looking down on people or condescension. But clearly Northwestern is nervous about that.
I mean, I totally understand
I
that.
do too, yeah.
I could imagine that some of the same, in a very different way, some of the same kinds of questions come up for Julia in talking about something that's so deeply intimate to her life and her family, you know, or writing about a child in the adjoining room who's dying. You know,
Yeah.
it is complex.
It's complex, yeah, it is. Julian, you've got something to say about this.
Well, I'm certainly listening very intently, and I'm thinking about when I would write as about experiences with clients. I worked really hard to fictionalize a lot of it because I felt this huge responsibility to protect confidentiality. But there
Mhm.
was, I mean, just to respond to Elizabeth's experience of people liking to hear it. I did have one very long-term adult patient that had started with my working with her severely sexually, physically, and emotionally. It started with me assessing her child, but then she discovered her own abuse, blah, blah, blah. And the long and short of it, there was a dream in the poem that she had brought to me that I just couldn't figure out how to disguise it. So I felt like I needed to ask her how she felt. And we'd worked together a long time, and she just sat there and sobbed and said, I have never felt so understood in my life as I do right now. And I think it's funny because I don't I'm very skeptical about poetry really making a change in the world. I have this deep feeling that most people really don't like poetry. They really don't want to deal with it. It's too ambiguous, it's too difficult, it's whatever their reasons are. And if you really are gonna testify about these things, probably there's probably better ways to do it. But that's never been something I could do. It just was not something I could do. I wrote. I do have to say that this experience with my daughter and son-in-law and my grandson was, for the first time, my daughter started to really depend on my poems. She'd always hated them before. She said, Mom, read me one that has some hope in it. Mom, do you have any that have hope in it? And then it was so sweet because when she had to wait about a year and a half after his cure to be able to read the book, and she and her husband went on and on about every poem they loved and why they loved it and what it meant to them. And I could see the power of it being codified for them in some way, you know, and that surprised me. It felt like a very selfish enterprise to do this. It hadn't felt like something I was giving to them. But there's also this part of me that feels like, God, if people could just know what goes on every single day in these hospitals, on these units with these amazing doctors and nurses and staff and parents, and the bravery of some of these kids. And, you know, there's still that sense of, oh, I want to shed light on this somehow, even though maybe this isn't the best way to do it, you know?
What were you thinking, Elizabeth?
Oh, well, I mean, sympathy for Julia's predicament, and
Yeah.
also just, yeah, the power of being able to take something that's harrowing and find a way into language for it. And it sounds like it really was significant in support of your daughter.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. And it's hard to know what exactly she would say, but, you know, I did, of course, well, no, you know, it's funny. They knew I was writing this book and they never said not to. So I never explicitly asked their permission. I was a little scared what they were going to say. They have no trouble being really critical of me. So I just didn't know I was going to go over. So it was a really positive experience.
Well, also, I mean, this is also documentary poetry in a way. And what was I going to say about that?
Well, it wasn't quite, because again, I like, the baby's name is not Percy. And, you know,
They're not what?
I fictionalized a lot of it. I mean, and then of course, my grandson wasn't verbal. And there's very few things there's a couple things that nurses said, a couple things my daughter said that I actually used. But most of it, other than the procedures I talk about, like the science of it, most of it was fictionalized just because, I don't know, don't they say you have to tell at least one lie in every poem you write? I think I've read that before.
Well, you know, this gets into another one of the notes that I made, as you can see, very orderly, you know, about the kind of disguising to protect confidentiality while at the same time telling the true stories that you want to tell. And I know that, for example, with prose, there seems to be uh, a line that is staunchly protected about, how much you can fictionalize and how much is it supposed to be true, and you have to um fictionalize, you have to disguise people, I think. And can't remember where I was just reading about some whether it was a reader or a fellow poet that um, was upset because a given poem was not 100% true, and or um, that the I was not your literal I. Um,
Yeah, but this is a big thing for me, is the idea that fact and truth are not the same thing. And if you can get to what's true in a poem, you are being you're being true to the work of a poem. But that's got nothing to do necessarily with facts. I think part of what I loved about Elizabeth's work is hearing, it felt like the language that would be spoken that would be really hard to make up, like it. I mean, maybe I don't know about well, not maybe, I absolutely do not know about your background, Elizabeth, but I know the way I was raised, I wouldn't know how to sneak in, $100 bill to a jail. And I mean, that's just kind of amazing to me. Like, God, what ingenuity is that, and survival mechanism. So I that really annoys me, that someone would expect facts in poetry. That's not what poetry is. But the truth, yes, you have every right to expect the truth in poetry. It's just not necessarily a fact.
Thoughts?
I would just say I did change people's names and other details, but I did also sometimes share things with people who knew what it was about. And I think also I was working with a lot of people. I was working in the court and in the jail, and so sometimes I had extremely ephemeral contacts with people, and sometimes long term. I wasn't a therapist. I was doing like very discrete tasks, and so I think that's also a question: is how do you be responsible to someone who had an important momentary role in your life, who did something that was remarkable or interesting, and you will never see them again, and you may not even have known their name. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of dicey ethics in this, but I really loved the people that I got the chance to work with, and I'm still in touch with quite a few people, and that's kind of the transformative aspect of this, is that it demonstrated to me that people who seem to be chronically in the criminal justice system, addicted, whatever, they can heal. And you cannot anticipate who that will happen for.
Right.
And that was just such a powerful part of that experience.
Like Julia, you're not knowing which of those patients, including your grandson, were going to live or die. Yeah, yeah, such
I
meaning.
just want to say, Elizabeth, I find your ethical concerns so touching. And I have to say, I argue a little bit about the fact that there is something at heart exploitive about writing. And I remember when I was a college student, because I've written my whole life ever since I was a really little girl. And at the time I was writing short stories. And I remember this boyfriend of mine saying he didn't even want to talk anymore because he just felt like I was a vacuum cleaner, just sucking up everything he said to use somehow. And I had a really close friendship with a poet who I don't know if you've ever read, but she's an amazing poet, Ruth Schwartz. And she's phenomenal. And she doesn't write anymore, unfortunately, but she published a bunch of books and she won like every award out there. And there was a time where we were reading each other's work to the point where each other's images from conversations would, like, I would tell her something about what happened to me at the children's shelter, something horrible, and then she'd write an amazing poem about it. And then I'd be pissed off at her, like, wait, that happened to me. I was going to write about that. So I do think there's this weird unconscious dialogue and also this way in which you do have to kind of exploit. But I love that you feel this conflict about it because that's also so true.
Yeah. Um, I'm getting so I don't usually see things from the chat, but a couple of things that I'm seeing are one of the people in the open mic was asking Elizabeth, how do you suppose um one can make change for $100 bill in prison?
This I do not know. I don't know how that happened, but he was really emphatic that if you can get $100 bill and you can make it multiply. And I thought that was really interesting that there's this very complex economics. Um, I'm looking at Kurt's. We're also talking about the observer and the observed. Observers may be in a relatively safe space while the observed is in true danger. I think I was really conscious of that, although sometimes I was a little bit in danger. I did get hit and cursed and smacked. Sometimes I was frequently vomited upon. But I think that part of what was happening to me at the time that I was working on these poems is I was going through a divorce and I was very economically precarious. And I was, for a while, house sitting, which is a good woman's way of being homeless. And there are many, many more women who are unhoused than we know because they couch surf, they house sit, they do these things. And one of the poems in the collection is about the massive floods that hit Boulder in 2013. And I was I was really endangered and scared, and it really gave me more insight into what people were living through.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, we all use our experience, hopefully, for empathy and also just basic information.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that dangerous, Kurt, but sometimes. I mean, people who are really, I'm sure that Nina and Julia know this, like people who are really intoxicated or under the influence, all bets are off.
Yeah.
There was a huge meth epidemic in Boulder while I was doing this work.
It was mostly a lot safer to be working in a hospital because even when people were actively psychotic, there were security staff
Yeah.
not far away. But it does remind me of talking about being in harm's way. Uh, when I was doing an internship in maximum security prison, one night I had created a tutoring program, and we met in the basement of the hospital, and the lights went out this one evening, and you've never seen a black so black. You've never seen but fortunately for me, there was a guy there who said to me, if you just connect with one of the inmates in a certain kind of way, and if it's the right, if that person has enough power, you're safe. You're safe. And I was working with someone who was that person for me. And so a couple of the other guys came in, couldn't see them, but I recognized their voices. It was so, um, I don't mean safe space, but I knew I was safe. And it was another remarkable, I mean, so many remarkable moments. We don't have a lot of time left, but if you guys have a short question for each other or a reaction to each other, now's a good time.
I feel like I kind of told you. I found it powerful, and I absolutely loved that you were giving voice to these people, as Nina put it, because it was, I mean, I did it for 20 years and I mean, you guys have no idea what it's like to work with feral children. They're about as dangerous as people get. Um, and I got to be too old to do it. I mean, I had to restrain them myself all the time, and I got hurt too much. But it really was the most powerful work of my life, I would say. You know, that population. They taught so much, and I love that you recorded it and that you made it into poetry.
Thank you. I find it really fascinating that you were given this commission to be hopeful and that you carried it out, but that you retained this other place to like hold the doubt and the pain, and that seems like it's part of the redemptive experience of this child's healing. That
Oh,
that even though you had a job at a certain point, which was to be without doubt, the larger story is the doubt and the sorrow and the complexity. And so I like that tension that I think is there in the poems.
thank you. That's really, really, really beautiful. And if you read the whole book, you'll see there's plenty of doubt and pain and suffering and horror. I mean, there was just no way for there not to be. But thank you for saying
One of our poets, Scott Delgarno, um, let's see. I can't find it right now. Would one of you
that.
read
I can
his
read it.
comment? Yeah, it's a famous, wonderful.
Hard, yeah, I think it's yeah, he even has William McCullough's one. It's hard to get the news from poetry, but people die every day for lack of what is found there, which is William Carlos Williams, and tonight's Spotlight Poets gave us such news.
I don't know if there's a way to do this, but I have a feeling people may have so much to say in reaction to tonight. And Bill, I don't know if there's a way that we can make sure people can leave comments on the Traveling Molly's page on Facebook, but if we can do that, let's do it. And anybody who wants to, if we can manage to do that, share um, whatever. Thank you all so much. And I do want to let you know that next month, June 8th, we're going to have four old friends reading from their books. As many of you know, we don't have people come back to um, do a feature a second time. which in 25 years is saying a lot. And it's been the impetus for my meeting more and more and getting to know more and more poets. But some of our precious open micers and community um, have come out with new books, and we want to hear what they've been up to in the years. So next month we'll have Dan Campion, Jim Madigan, Jen Moria, and Christy Bowen. And I'm just going to it'll be great to see them again. Um, thank all of you for being here, those on YouTube and all of our marvelous open micers, and Julia and Elizabeth. It was just such a privilege to spend time with you tonight. Your work is just
Thank you so much.
touched my heart. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Aloha.
Night.
Right.
Good night, all. Beautiful evening.